everyone, and welcome to another special customer spotlight. I'm Sam Alcoby, head of sales here at PracticePanther. We really work with so many amazing customers each and every day, and we're always learning such valuable lessons from them. That's really, I think, what propelled us to become, such a great software for these attorneys to benefit from. And these insights are really just so important to us, and we're just so excited to share them all with you. So today I have the pleasure of speaking with Nancynard. She's the senior partner at Nancynard and Associates. Nancy and I have been friends for about 5 years now, and she's been on the program that long. And it's just always such a pleasure to speak with her. I mean, she's my mother from Philadelphia, I call her. And we're just so excited to have her on the show. And Nancy's practice, really their main focus is on franchise law. Nancy's law firm has been in practice for over 25 years. And it's actually 100% woman owned and operated, which we'll get into a little bit more later on, but I just think that's incredible. Nancy's also been working remotely long before COVID-19 impacted a lot of regular businesses. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that as well, and how that transition was from already working remotely and everything. And I really just could not be more excited to introduce you all to Nancynard as we discuss her practice on this customer spotlight. So Nancy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Awesome. So just to kick things off here, give people a little bit of background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and really why you became a lawyer?
It's an interesting question. It's a long time ago. I've been practicing law for a long time. I call myself the dinosaur in the legal world at this point, but
But you are not extinct.
Thank you. I hope not. It's funny. I kind of landed into the franchise part, and even into practicing law. I started out in college. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and I graduated in 3 years. And in my fourth, I got my master's in education, thinking I was going to be like my mom and be a school teacher. And I was a Spanish major in college, and I thought I was going to teach Spanish, and kind of geared myself for that all through, that part of my life. And I was fluent in Spanish. I even could dream in Spanish in those days. Of course,
Wow.
if you don't use it, you lose it. So I can't do that anymore, but
right.
I could. And then I made the decision while I was in my master's program, and I student taught and then long-term subbed for a teacher in junior high school, because in those days it was junior high school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Right. And the kids were just horrible. I mean, it's a horrible age group. I mean, it's a really tough age group because, so I kind of thought about, well, maybe this isn't the right thing for me. Maybe this isn't, I love Spanish and I love teaching, but when you've got kids sitting there who can't stand it or doing it because it's required, it just wasn't fun. So I started thinking of other options, and law school was one of them. And I thought law school opened up a lot of opportunities. To do all kinds of things, even beyond practicing law. And once I was in law school, I realized I really loved learning the law. And when I got out of law school, I thought in my focus in law school, also wrong, that I was going to be, because I've always kind of thought about helping women. So I thought when I was in law school, I was going to do domestic relations work and work with women and help them. Again, I did do that for a short period of time after law school, did not enjoy it, had to rethink things, and went into working in a large corporation. So I worked for a $3.5 billion conglomerate initially. Wow. when I made that pivot, and I loved it. I loved negotiating contracts. I loved handling acquisitions and sales of businesses. They were publicly traded corporation, and I was able to really learn a lot about, because they made their bottom line every quarter by buying and selling other small businesses. So I did a lot of acquisitions and sales, and I just loved it. And then from there, I worked for a second in-house position. They had what's called a leveraged buyout of a group of their manufacturing companies. And it's where the owners the management of the companies buy out the company. Right. And I did work for them for several years. And then I went on to work for Nutrisystem as the third company. And Nutrisystem was, at that time, the largest weight loss company in the country, possibly the
Yeah.
world. They had 1,300 franchise locations and 500 corporate. So they had 1,800 locations around the US. They were bigger than, their competitors, and they had been
Right.
around for 20 years. And that's when I learned franchise law, and I found my niche. So it took a little
Amazing.
while, but I found my niche, and it was wonderful.
That
And
path, it's crazy. Got you there though. That's
yeah, I made
wild.
a few errors along the way, but you know what? I had some good support and good directions, and just kind of pivoted. And I tend to land on my feet when there's been diversity and issues in my life, and this has
I
been the
mean,
best landing.
that's
So
like a true character of a person, right? No matter how many times you fail or make a mistake, you still strike through it and come out stronger on the other side. I've always believed that.
I think that
So,
I do too,
yeah,
Sam. I agree.
yeah. And then what about, like, you at the last part was like Nutrisystems and working there and whatnot, but then getting into your own firm, like how did that
Yeah.
progress? And then really on top of that, what was like the most surprisingly challenging aspect of that, I guess?
So, and again, you'll hear some pivots. So
Yeah.
when Nutrisystem actually went into bankruptcy about 25 years ago, and when they went into bankruptcy, I literally wasn't even paid the last week I worked there,
Oh,
and yeah, it was crazy. But I have a law degree, so I said, okay, I will start on my own. And I had, as you heard, I had never worked for a law firm.
right.
So it was a very tough pivot because I didn't know the first thing about IOLTA accounts. I didn't
Hmm.
know about, built timekeeping, because when you're in house, you don't have to keep billable time. I didn't
Hmm.
know about any of those things. So it was a challenge in every possible way, and it took some time to ramp up. And I worked from my home. I did have some health issues
Hmm.
towards the end of my time at Nutrisystem. I had some health issues, so it just made sense for me to work from home so I could be flexible in my hours. And it grew from there. We had eventually 5 attorneys. I think it was 5 or 6 attorneys,
Right.
and so I started that firm. I grew it. I learned a lot, and really have always been the primary rainmaker. And then
Yeah.
in 2011, I started talking to 2 other individuals who were executives one was an executive in the franchise world, and I knew him, and he and I talked about forming a firm together because I thought he would be a good
Right.
litigator, and I don't litigate. So we had talked about that, and we decided to merge my practice and form a new law firm. So in essence, I started a second law firm. I brought my team of attorneys along, and that was good for the first few years, and then it fell apart. Things were
Hmm.
not good. Partnership was not good,
It happens.
and
Yeah.
it was a very ugly parting.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it didn't have to be, but it was worse than any divorce.
Hmm.
And I found myself starting over again. So I have the current iteration of my practice is the third third firm that I've started.
Yeah.
It's now 5 years old. March will be 5 years old.
I don't know if you knew this, or maybe I've mentioned it to you recently, but like, it was right a little bit after I started, way before I became head of sales, and I was, an account executive, and we were, just after that startup period where we're like, exponentially growing and everything. And I don't think you know how nervous I was on like our first
No,
demo, but it
no,
clearly seems like it didn't feel that way to you. So that's good.
no. I had no idea, Sam.
I was like new. I was learning like you did. I was like, IOLTA, yeah, let me check into this for you. Like that's amazing. But
Funny.
you touched on it a little bit. You were working from home a little, and now I know your practice has been remotely working. So this wasn't really a new idea to you, obviously, as it was to a lot of people. That were transitioning, obviously, through last March of 2020. So tell me a little bit about how you have operated your firm virtually for so long. What really set you apart, while everyone else was really scrambling to figure out, how to use Zoom, and like we were talking earlier, not to be a cat on Zoom. But
Yeah.
but yeah, tell me a
I
little
am
bit
not
about
a
that.
cat.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Well, it's a really interesting question that I haven't really been asked that often. But when I was with the $3.5 billion conglomerate, I had my son. And when I had my son, I went back. I took my maternity leave, and they wanted me to come back to work. And I approached my boss. It was all male. And I approached my boss and I said, I'd like to come back to work part-time. And I was told, oh, there's no such thing as a part-time lawyer. So that was the first thing told to me. So when I worked for their leverage bio company, the general counsel was a woman, and I was home with my son, who was an infant. And she said, we just formed this new company and I need help legally. Do you want to pick up work or have, someone come pick up the work and work on it from your home? So that's kind of how that seed even got planted in my head. And we're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. And because my son's probably your age or older. So, it was a long time ago.
You're like a pioneer of it.
Well, it was really challenging. But I mean, in those days, all I was doing was keeping handwritten, time and so forth, really, and only was reporting to the general counsel.
Right.
It evolved. And as I said, after Nutrisystem, when I was leaving, I had some health issues. And so I started working from home. And again, there were challenges. I kept everything in a ledger book of time, timekeeping. I did billing through, I think QuickBooks or something that was desktop version. There weren't online resources like there are today. I think I had a separate home line that was my, phone for the office. Everything was pretty, old school. And then we started to grow. And my model always was, because of what was told to me when I wanted to go back to work part-time, my model was to give other women that opportunity. And that's why we've always been in all, other than when I merged with the men that I mentioned, my firm has always been all female. And they work the hours that they want to work. They work remotely from their homes. And as the internet has evolved and cloud-based programs have evolved, it has given everyone the opportunity to be able to do this in a much more efficient way. And it's been great because, everything we do is cloud-based. Our phone system is a voice over IP phone. We use, of course, PracticePanther. We use, Box, Drive for document storage. Everything is in the cloud, and it's wonderful. It's worked out phenomenally.
Yeah, it's crazy, the evolution of technology and how fast it's moving. And that's why it's always important to either stay with it or really stay ahead of it, which you obviously have done such a good job at. Now, I mean, during that period, though, when, COVID was really hitting at, March of 2020 and companies were scrambling, did any colleagues come to you for like tips on maybe how to work better?
All the time.
All the time. And what did you share with them?
So Sam, I am a founding member and board member of an organization called WomenOwned Law, which is for women legal entrepreneurs. I think you and I have spoken about it in the past. I also chair their virtual programming committee, which of course is a natural corollary for me because I do everything virtually anyway. And we have a monthly virtual speaker series. I have given talks twice now to WomenOwned Law on virtual law practices and how they work. And that, in fact, we're having our symposium, WomenOwned Law is having a symposium in March. And I'm speaking on hiring and firing in a virtual environment as well, training, hiring, and so forth in a virtual environment. So, I'm happy to help anybody who is interested in learning more about that, how to do that. And, I've learned the hard way. So I know how to do it. As I said, I've done it now for a while.
Yeah, no, there's, experience in itself, obviously, and being able to share that knowledge and not just hoard it is just so special and really gracious of you. So I'm sure they all appreciate that. And I hope they're putting those actions and applying them because I'm sure it'll help them as well, But based off so some of the things you just said, I have like two different questions about that. So you obviously called out, this amazing organization that you were a founding member of, WomenOwned Law. Tell us a little bit more besides the virtual, speeches that you gave to these people. Tell us about that organization.
The focus of WomenOwned Law is to help women legal entrepreneurs, and so it's women law firms. It's also women legal support services firms. So one of our board members and very, very active, I think she also is a founding member, has a legal support firm that she owns that is actually a placement firm. She does legal staffing and hiring helping you find the right attorney or the right paralegal for your practice. And it's a great organization because it's very supportive of women entrepreneurs in the law. And its mission is to be mentors, to be supportive, to have resources available to each other. I've made referrals through our network. We've grown, the organization's only a few years old. We're growing. We're always looking for sponsors. So
Incredible.
anybody out there wants to sponsor, they're always looking for sponsorship. So
yeah,
it's
amazing.
good.
Yeah, for sure. And then touching on the transition from that, and I know we spoke about it a little bit and touched on it, but like your firm is 100% woman owned and operated. And again, that's just something to be extremely proud of, especially with everything you had to go through and the pivots and the things that got you there. So tell us a little bit more of the importance of that to you for the firm to be like that.
So, as I said, it's very important to me because, I wanted to make a change in how the law perceives women and how we are able to balance our work life with our home life. And there should never be the choice that I was forced to make or was told I had to make. We live in a different era, but those choices are still being placed upon women. Women
unfortunately.
Women aren't paid equally. Women attorneys aren't even paid equally. They're not made partner at the same time that their male colleagues are. And of course, if they have a baby, that sets them back tremendously as well. And so, my goal has always been to change that, at least in my own world that I can control. Can't control what happens in,
of course,
a big law firm. Can't control what happens in big corporations, but to the extent that I can do something about it within my own realm, that's my goal.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things also I love to talk to people about when they're feeling down about outside things. Control what you can control, and the chips will lay where they may,
Yeah.
And then going back to, your franchise law, what would you say is maybe a good tip for people who are thinking about becoming a franchisee?
So, validate everything. I mean, that's probably the takeaway. So franchise law is a very niche area of law, which is part of what I love about it. It's a subset of business practice, of business law practice. We're totally transactional. We don't litigate. And we only represent franchisees, which are individuals looking to invest in a franchise opportunity. And when I'm talking to an individual who's looking to make this investment, and an investment in a franchise opportunities can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, could be even $1 million and up, depending on the brand and what's involved, and what are you looking at and the size of it. Different brands, fitness centers, for example, if they're large fitness franchises, could be huge. Think of like a Planet Fitness, right? Okay, so they're given something called a disclosure document, a franchise disclosure document. And that's part of what's nice about franchising, is that every franchisor must provide this individual or group of people this disclosure document that gives them a lot of information that they have to be able to evaluate and validate the system. But it doesn't mean that everything in there is true. You need to validate that. And so to me, the most important thing to tell someone looking to invest in a franchise opportunity is to speak to franchisees that are already in the system. They're your best resource. They're out there in the trenches doing this. They can tell you what they like and dislike. I can tell you there's a brand out there that everyone that's listening to this, everyone that is watching it will know, and I'm not going to say their name, but nonetheless, they're everywhere. They're in every town. And they do well financially. They're financially a really strong franchise, but every single one of the franchisees I've ever spoken to anywhere in the country hates it. And if they had it to do all over again, they would not do it. Because the franchisor is not a good franchisor. Franchisor steals their customers, markets after them directly, does all kinds of things that are detrimental to them. And there's been massive lawsuits. Yeah, it's really horrible. And there have been massive lawsuits against the franchisor. But nonetheless, these franchisees make a lot of money. So people still look to invest in them because they're lucrative. but that there's more, franchise relationship is almost like a marriage. And the franchisor and franchisee, you need to really make sure that you want to be in bed with that party.
Right.
And that's why talking to franchisees and even former franchisees, and they're all listed in that disclosure document, is a very important thing to do. And I have blog posts on questions to ask them and ways to validate and what to do. All of that's on my website.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Website, by the way, leonardandassociates.com. So if you want to check that out and look at those blogs or reach out to her.
All A's in my name. There you go. So
yeah. We'll spell it out for him in a little. But, and then I was thinking also, we talked about it earlier, just, your path to becoming a lawyer and then your own law firm and working in the big law firm. So you have all these different, experiences that maybe someone coming out of school doesn't even know yet, or someone thinking about or going to law school, or maybe someone just thinking about taking their LSATs or something. What's like the one thing that maybe you explain to people, but what do you wish people would just understand about becoming a lawyer?
Well, first of all, when you go to totally, but I love what I do, so it's really okay. Most lawyers don't, by the way. Most lawyers don't like practicing law, and they can't wait to retire, and they can't wait to be done and do something else with their lives. I am not in that position. I love what I do, and maybe because I do have the flexibility, to guide my life the way I want to. But when you graduate law school, there are lots of opportunities, and practicing law is one of them. The law degree gives you a way of thinking that's completely different than how you learned in college, or just by growing up. And so I think that's what you have to remember, that practicing law is one avenue, and I think it's a wonderful skill that you learn in law school about how to think by questioning. Law school is taught by the Socratic method of constantly questioning, and then questioning again, and then questioning again. And I think that that gives you a way of thinking that's a little bit different. It's a very critical way of thinking. But I think that opens doors to all kinds of things. I mean, a law degree can open doors to politics. It can open doors to a corporate job. I mean, just because of that unique way of thinking, you have a skill set that gives you an advantage over a lot of other people.
No, that makes total sense.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. Not only did it answer it, but it has me like thinking like, I'm in a group chat with some of my closest best friends from when I was a kid. There's like 8 of us. And since we were 6 or 7 years old, we've been best friends. 2 of them, or 3 of them actually, are just brilliant lawyers. And when we're talking like sports or something, you see how they dig deep with questions, and they're just the way they're thinking, and they challenge each other, and it always makes it for a much more engaging, conversation and whatnot. But you're right. I mean, it leads to open doors to so many other things, like you said, whether it's politics or these other things, not just being a lawyer. So I completely agree, and that definitely answers the question. And then we talked about it a little bit. I know you were working remote a long time before COVID and whatnot, but did you have, or do you have anything to tell us about how maybe your business has changed since March of 2020? Was there any big things, anything you want to share?
Well, I didn't have to do a lot of change because we were already set up completely virtually. We already had PracticePanther. We already had Box. We already had a voice over IP phone system that everybody's tapped into. We had all the tools in place, so we didn't have to scrounge around and go looking for ways to cope in a virtual environment, because we already had that. So that piece we had in place, which was great. What we had to cope with was the fact that, come March, when things shut down, we had no business, because who's going to buy a franchise, in that environment? Now, I will tell you that, 2 or 3 months into it, we did have things starting to trickle back. We saw a lot of home-based franchise businesses. In March, when things first closed down, I spent 3 weeks, literally 3 weeks, all day, every day, talking to clients who had brick and mortar businesses, franchises, whose leases they wanted to know and explore what were their options to stop paying rent during that period of time where they couldn't be open. And I didn't charge them anything, because I felt, how can I charge somebody? How can I charge somebody anything at this time where everybody's suffering so much? So for 3 weeks, that's what I did. And I mean, I just felt like it's my one little tiny piece that I can offer to somebody to help them through this if I can. But the problem is that, there weren't a lot of ways to help, because most
Right.
leases did not, even though they have something called a force majeure or acts of God clause in their lease, it didn't allow for a virus as an exception, and it didn't allow
Wow.
for a government shutdown. And therefore, they weren't able to just stop paying rent. And then I always recommend business interruption insurance in any lease that we're reviewing. And most of those companies denied it. And there's a lot of lawsuits
Wow.
right now about that. But most of the business interruption carriers denied it, saying, oh, viruses aren't covered and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's crazy, because
Ah,
they were just trying to get around it. So, we were impacted. Business definitely was not at the level that it was the year before, or what looks like is happening this year. But I
mhm.
knew in the back of my head that when a lot of people are laid off from jobs, the first avenue that they do is go to look to get their own business,
Their
and
own business.
franchising is that avenue. So I knew it would pick up eventually when there was a light at the end of the tunnel. We're seeing that light now in December. And January and February, we've seen a tremendous pickup in
Yeah.
people looking at franchising.
That's great. And, it's just such a beautiful thing you said earlier about you understanding what a struggle these people were having, and you were just offering your services to help them, not even getting paid. So I really believe in good karma, and I think it will come back in some way, some shape or form,
Thanks.
maybe tomorrow or a year in 10 years. But regardless, that's just an awesome thing that you were able to do for them. So kudos to you
Thank
for
you.
that. Of
Thank
course.
you.
And then just one last question before we close out here. You know, like we said, you've been on Practice Panther 5 years now. We're old friends now from when you first got on, from when I pretty much was first getting into it here. How do you think it's helped you? How has Practice Panther been able to help you kind of achieve those goals of being remote and tracking time and notes and all that stuff? And how has it helped you kind of maintain those habits for your firm?
That's a super easy question to answer, because I don't think I could maintain this practice without it. So to me, it's a very, very simple answer. It's everything. I mean,
Okay.
it integrates with so much. And as you know, because you and I talked 5 years ago when I was starting,
Hmm.
I had used Clio previously. And so I had a basis of comparison of a very, competitive brand of yours. And to me, there's no comparison. So it's Practice Panther all the way. I mean, I'm a big, I'm a big
I
proponent.
know.
Um, Very active on the Pennsylvania Bar Association's listserv, and I talk about Practice Panther all the time when it comes up as a question from anybody that they're considering looking into practice management programs. I think very highly of it. I don't know how, I truly do not know how I would run the practice in any other way.
Wow.
Everything from when we have a new attorney that joins the firm, I've hired attorneys. I have one attorney right now I've never met that works for my firm. She lives
Wow.
in upstate. Yeah, she lives in upstate Pennsylvania, and we were supposed to have a firm meeting, and she was going to come down to the Philly area in this past summer, but of course with COVID that didn't happen.
All right.
I have an attorney who's in Houston and an attorney in Parkland, Florida, and so we were all going to kind of congregate over the summer, but obviously that didn't happen. So I
Yeah.
have this one attorney who I've never met, and I hired her through Zoom meetings and so forth, and but training with Practice Panther, having workflows, is such an advantage, because then I know that she's getting these pop-up notes, these reminders. This is time now to do this next step. You finish this step, go to the next step. So when you're looking at a lease, here's the steps to follow. And templates, I think, in Practice Panther are another incredible feature that I use every day. I have
Okay.
a well, first of all, I have a client intake form that every new client gets to fill out. That's very helpful. I have, so it makes it very easy when I have the initial consultation with them to then set up a new matter, because all the context there, get the engagement letter
Exactly.
out, which is also templates. I have a template for every type of engagement letter that we send out. I mean, again, like I said earlier to you, automating a virtual practice is everything. I mean, having
Right.
everything as much as you can automated saves you time on all of the administrative. And I don't even know if you know this, Sam, I don't have a paralegal and I don't have any clerical staff.
I didn't know that.
I do everything, and I could never
Wow.
do that without PracticePanther. I do all my
Wow.
billing. I send out all the invoices. Everything syncs over with everything else, QuickBooks and it's just
Yeah.
it's so seamless, and it's time efficient.
We just really appreciate you and everything you do,
Thank
not
you,
just
Sam.
not just as far as us, but for your clients as well. And again, just to close out, if anybody is interested in learning more about franchise law or want to check out Nancy's website, it's Nancynard and Associates. It's LANARD and Associates.com. And unless there's anything else, Nancy, that you'd like to go over, I can't tell you how much I appreciate and love doing this with you, and I'm looking forward to continuing our ever evolving relationship here.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Sam. It's really been a lot of fun talking to you and learning a little more about you and sharing some things about me, and it's been a lot of fun. So thank you so much for that opportunity. And I love PracticePanther, as I said. It's been great.
Amazing, Nancy. And to everyone out there, thank you so much for watching and joining, and feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions, and we're looking forward to speaking with all of you soon. Have a great one.